I appreciate that Colonial Marines has already had its head kicked in by critics on a multitude of occasions, but I thought I would try and look at it from another angle. I picked up this game as a Steam key and it only cost me £2. It came complete with the DLC that gave me classic franchise characters like Hicks and all of its other pals. Just as well it was a bundle because I can't see myself or anyone else using the multiplayer that much. Jim Sterling recently did an excellent video looking into the production history and the controversy surrounding the development of this game, and for those of you that's interested, it's well worth a watch. So for me, the point of this video is more to decide for the low price of £2 whether this game's actually worth it. So far I've only played the first 2 chapters. I was actually massively cock-blocked by crashes just after the second chapter, and I'm not sure if this is purely down to the game, which is well known to be an unreliable fucker at the best of times, or the fact that I just upgraded to Windows 10. In hindsight, perhaps bad planning on my part, but we do have to move with the times, he said reviewing a game coming on 3 years old. The game starts out with a lot of promise. Finding yourself in the Sulaco from aliens, you navigate through the ship after responding to a distress signal from Corporal Hicks, but you soon realise that the whole joint has become more deadly than Hogan's Alley. It's a fairly tense introduction, but it sadly doesn't match the visual quality promised in the original trailer. The alien combat is initially promising though, and they are given a fairly tense and moody introduction. The big issue for me, and it's surprising that it comes this early on, is straight at the start of the second chapter they decided to bring in the company, inverted commas. For any self-respecting Alien fan, they will know full well that Whale and Yutani are not to be trusted, and so to have them fuck us over was no great shock. In fairness, I appreciate to the Marines in the game, this will be news, but it felt like a sloppy way to bring in some pretty average combat with armed enemies, leading to some less than engaging firefights. This isn't even original in the Alien gaming series, as I distinctly remember having battled humans in previous games. It's introduced in a way that's obviously meant to be an exciting development and a change of pace. Maybe I'm just cynical, but I let out a hefty sigh at their arrival. And it was at that moment that the game crashed. I can't be sure if this was some kind of protest from a computer about the direction the game had taken, or whether it was just a genuine excitement overload. Although as stated I've yet to play further to see how this develops, I have read enough about the game to realise that they are a continuing menace. Far be it from me to discourage the developer from trying to change up the formula, but it just feels really unnecessary as there's plenty of untapped mileage in the core Alien story. A while back there was a massive patch release for this game and many claim it had fixed a number of the larger issues. I have to say, playing on the hardened difficulty setting, which is just one below the hardest setting, I found a reasonable amount of challenge. The aliens were pretty aggressive, despite hearing that they were as badass as kittens in the original release, and I found they could take me down in only a handful of hits. Not me personally, obviously the character. If I was there they'd be fucked. After playing the game for a short while, I installed some graphics mods that the community had recommended to try and see how much of an impact it would make. I'm not one to choose graphics over gameplay, but seeing as the game doesn't shine particularly well on either front, I thought it was worth mentioning. Mostly I felt they had just crushed the details in the blacks and gave the game a more of an overall blue hue. But I'd say I think it's hard to criticise a community effort to fix a broken game, and in some sections of the game the darker tone actually does work. I'd be remiss if I didn't draw comparisons to a game that followed only 1 year later, Alien Isolation. I appreciate that there is a distinct difference in style between the first 2 Alien films, and that in turn feeds directly into the games that are based on them, but Alien Isolation was a far superior game and it is an undoubtedly worthy entry into the Alien franchise. Having played Alien Isolation to completion, I can say wholeheartedly that it was clearly crafted with great attention to detail by fans of the original film. It's much harder to say the same for Colonial Marines. It was at this point I thought it was worth mentioning the Alien vs Predator series. Although the Alien vs Predator films may have fallen flat in their arse, there's a lot of love for the classic games that came before them. I picked up the 2010 Aliens vs Predator 3 for £3, and having played it briefly before, thought it would be worthwhile to make a comparison between it and Colonial Marines. Aye, that's right, I'm £5 down for this review, you better fucking appreciate it.
I never asked for this.
To my mind anyway, despite being the older game, I feel graphically Alien vs Predator is superior. It also seems to handle itself better, and the aliens are less plentiful but certainly a harder fight. Without having played more of the game yet, it's hard to say, but from my initial experiences it feels like a better game. So what's the take home from this? Well, as I said, I didn't want to delve too deep into a review of Colonial Marines as that's been done to death. From what I've seen so far, and despite the rather ham-fisted attempts to turn it into a standard FPS at parts, with the changes made, the game does seem to be worth the small sum of £2. In saying that though, Aliens vs Predator for a small amount more seems the more interesting game. And for my final however, I recently noticed that Alien Isolation has been seen for less than £10 during the Steam sale. I was lucky to get a Steam key of the game at launch with all the DLC for only £14, so to be able to get the game for less than 10 is an indisputable bargain. In conclusion, if you're only going to spring for one game in the Alien franchise, make sure it's Alien Isolation. However, my personal favourite Aliens games are only found at the arcade.
Now you may notice that this game actually takes some liberties.
Yeah, some slight liberties. In the interest of equality, I'm going to pick a woman. If I was fighting against aliens, I'd want to stay the fuck away from them, but the guys in this game, and the ladies of course, seem pretty adept at being able to go in and just knock fuck out of these aliens, as you just saw there. I realise I've done one final thing about 20 times now. I'm starting to feel like fucking Columbo, but after finding Hicks's shotgun in the game, I became infuriated and seemingly now only being armed with shotguns. The pulse rifle seemed to have just upped and disappeared. I checked online and a number of people had had the same headache. A short while later I discovered the weapon select and I found this, Ripley's Death Machine. A combination pulse rifle, grenade launcher and flamethrower, well known to anyone that's seen Aliens, that according to Steam I'd unlocked by buying the DLC bundle. And as sad as it is, I'd be the first to admit my enjoyment factor went up massively when I found out I could set the stupid Weyland Yutani mercenaries on fire. And then pulse rifle them, and then grenade them.